Good morning, everyone, and welcome to LSND Live's Community Conversations. And I am Jen Lee, the Executive Director at LSND. And I am lucky enough this morning to be joined by Michelle Erickson from AARC. Welcome, Michelle. And what does AARC stand for?
Thanks, Jen. The Abused Adult Resource Center.
Very good. Thank you. And so tell us a little bit about your position there, how long I know you've been there a long time,
Yeah,
and what AARC does.
sure. I've actually been there. This is my 20th year. I started out as the transitional housing coordinator. And so over the years, I became pretty passionate not only about helping survivors, but the lack of affordable and available housing for people. And that's generally the biggest need that we have from survivors that come to us is housing. So I did that for a long time, worked in the housing programs, and then became the director in 2019. So I've been the director about 6 years now, a little over 6 years. Yeah.
Very good. And you say survivors, we're talking about domestic violence survivors. What groups of survivors are you working with these days?
Sure. Domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, both labor and sex trafficking, stalking, dating violence, teen dating violence, any of the adult types of intimate partner crimes or intimate crimes.
Okay. And I also see the housing and the transitional housing being a huge problem. I hear about it more on the back end from the legal services side. What is being done these days for that space? Are you being able to build new areas for them to be? Are you making new partnerships? What's being done there?
Yeah, the former director had been there about 40 years, and that was kind of her dream was to have sort of a full circle arrangement of or resources for housing. And so we start with emergency shelter, we have transitional shelter, and then we also have a 7 unit efficiency apartment building.
Okay.
And so we have some rapid rehousing grants that we provide assistance for people in their own places in the community. And
Mhm.
so I think it's been really interesting to see the need grow, number one, but number two, for us to be able to kind of tackle that all the way from emergency shelter to permanent housing. So I'm really proud of the fact that we have all those options for people when it comes to housing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of misconceptions probably about how it all works and the emergency side of things is important, but then the long term, how to get people back on their feet and
Right.
in the right places, I think is often misunderstood, I
Yes.
guess.
And then being able to provide that case management throughout that so that people don't feel like they're alone, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. And where is AARC? Where is your territory, or where do you mostly work out of?
So we serve 7 counties, and that's the state's been divided between the 19 agencies. So we each have like our certain area of counties that
Mhm.
we provide services to. So we provide Burley and Morton, Kidder, Sheridan, Grant, Emmons, and then Sioux County, including Standing Rock.
Okay.
So about generally over the years, it's kind of stayed consistent, but about 30% of our clients are Native American, and about 50% in our shelter are Native American. And of course, now we're seeing a lot more of other cultures in our community.
Mhm.
So therefore, it's prompted us to make more connections with places like Global Neighbors and making sure that we have what we need to provide the services to people that maybe don't have English as their first language or have cultural needs um, around the domestic violence and being able to leave and all of that. So.
Yeah. So I know you have a 24-hour crisis line and the emergency type services. What are some other services people don't realize are needed when they're leaving
Yeah.
that type of situation?
We've tried to encounter everything and then
Hmm.
figure out a solution. If we can't, we'll try to connect people with the resources that we can. So I would say two of the resources we generally don't have are legal services on site
On site, yeah.
and counseling services on site. So we've partnered with, of course, we call legal services when we need help. We also have some partnerships with really good counselors in the community, a lot of them that have actually worked for us, so they know all the ins and outs and the dynamics and things like that. And so we will try to connect people to those. But financial resources are always tight. People think they
Mhm.
can't leave if they don't have money, and that's not true. We'll help with sometimes, depending on our grants and what money we have available, sometimes we can help with things like transportation or gas vouchers, medications.
Yeah.
Both our shelters provide things like hygiene supplies, food, over-the-counter medications sometimes.
Okay.
We try to address the basic needs when people come to us in crisis because that's where it starts.
Yeah, and I've seen a trend of people who want to get jobs or trying to get jobs and they're not able to because when basic needs are not taken care of, it's harder to go get employment and try to make the money needed to get out. So I've seen
And
a
we
lot of
have
that
a
lately.
Yeah, and we also have a program called New Directions. So it's our education and employment program. And
Uh-huh.
so it's a curriculum-based program. However, there is some autonomy in choosing which sections of the curriculum you'd like to do. And so everything from building your self-esteem to writing resumes, interviewing skills, taking people on tours of United Tribes or BSC or Mary or wherever they're maybe looking at that, helping people get their GED or sign up for CNA classes. And so we want to make it possible for people to be
Hmm.
independent and pay for those things. But, um, and to be honest, the social service system doesn't work that great when you have a mom and 5 kids that come to our shelter and people are like, well, why aren't they working? Why aren't they working? Well, childcare is not cheap. And transportation, if you don't have a car, how are you going to get
Yep.
these 5 kids to school and to daycare and then go to work and then still have money left over to do whatever you need to do? So we want to provide that safety and security for people until they're ready to be on their own.
Yes, the whole just get a job thing drives me a little bit crazy sometimes because there's so much
Yeah,
that goes into that. So
right, right. Yep.
won't
Yeah.
get on too many soapboxes there, but yes, it's frustrating. Are you seeing a lot? So this has been interesting to me because I think we had talked recently, and there was something that came up that was elder um, partner violence has seemed to be like increasing. And have you seen that
Yeah.
at ARC?
Um, so several years ago, boy, I don't even know how long ago, maybe 10 years ago, we had a grant around elder or abuse in later life is what they were calling
Yep.
it, where they were designated that as 50 years old and older. So wasn't ready to be called an elder yet, but there we are.
Right.
Um, and yeah, it's a lot of the times it's additional types of violence. So it's not maybe necessarily just physical or just emotional
Hmm.
or those two, but financial abuse and caregiver abuse. And we've had several cases over the years of that where they just have that's what they've known for 30, 40, 50
Right.
years. And to get out of that's a little more difficult when your names are both on farmland or your names are both on vehicles or whatever. And you
Hmm.
want to make that break, but it's just all you've known. And
Yeah.
so it's a little bit longer process sometimes to try and help people be okay with making that decision to leave
Okay.
and to do it safely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's hard once it's so many years it's been ingrained or so many years you've dealt with something. It's harder and harder and harder. So
Yeah,
we've been
for
seeing that a
sure.
lot. And on the
Hmm.
divorce side too, it's not even just the abusive side, it's just the separating
Right.
decisions. So
Yeah. Yeah.
what I know you offer support groups and things like that. What are some of those resources that AARC has?
So we do have 2 ongoing support groups a week. We have one for domestic violence, but we also have one for the elder domestic violence because I think we realized when we had that grant that this particular group of people really understood each other more
Hmm.
than maybe somebody who'd been in a situation for a year or something. Not that they aren't both in their own ways difficult to deal with, but just having that bond of some other older people that were leaving these longer term relationships. And so
Yeah.
that group has continued on weekly for, like I said, probably about 10 years.
Okay.
And so we have that one. And then we try to do a sexual assault support group twice a year. It's an 8 week closed group, or 6 to 8 weeks, but sometimes it's just harder to get. A lot of the times with sexual assault, people want to just like forget about it and not
Yeah.
rehash it or whatever. And so sometimes it's a little bit harder to get people to join that group, but that's also an option.
There, yeah. And I see. again, those wraparound type services or the things you wouldn't think of sometimes are, I've definitely referred over to AARC because I'm like,
Yeah.
they have these ways of finding the right resources that people need. So,
Yeah, and we, like probably one of the other bigger things we tackle is our crisis team, which we have 8 advocates that are um, available Monday through Friday during the day, that are ready to deal with whatever crisis comes in,
mhm.
and um, is assisting people with protection orders. So when
Okay.
they're, in a situation where they want to, where they feel like their safety is high and they need to make sure, we'll walk them through that process of applying for a protection order. And of
Okay.
course, we know there's 2 different kinds of orders, right? Restraining orders and domestic violence protection orders. So we can help with those. We can't help with restraining orders, but we will, refer them back to the court if we feel like the restraining order would be, maybe a little more appropriate.
Yeah, that makes sense. There are, there's a lot of discussion around abused adults, and I know the legislative session you testified at a few different bills and things like that. I was paying attention to all those different things. Are you seeing any interest in more people getting involved in this area, or is there more interest in helping that kind of thing?
I think, yeah, I mean, I think we definitely always have people wanting to volunteer in some way. Um, Advocacy isn't something you can just learn overnight, right? It's something
Right.
you learn through different situations, through continued education, through just learning from each other and that. So I would say that maybe the misconception is that you have to be a social worker.
Mm,
Um,
okay.
or some kind of degree like that. And honestly, when I hire, I'm looking at, do you have passion to help people? And do you understand it? Do you get domestic violence and sexual assault and all of that? Um, it doesn't necessarily mean I have a degree in criminal justice, so it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a social work type of degree. We do have some licensed social workers on staff, but we have people with much different degrees that maybe they did that for school and didn't like it, but for some reason, experience or a friend or a family member has gone through something, and now you want to be involved in that. And so, I guess that's for me what's most important is, do you really want to help people and do you understand the dynamics?
Yeah, I think it's, you can't teach it. It's hard to teach that want to help. So I look for the same things, and I don't as much
Yeah.
care about the actual degree, but
This
can
was
you?
not my preferred career path. That is not what I intended to do 20 years ago. So, but here we are.
It's funny how things work out like that, though. We end up in positions we should be in through all kinds of different things that happen in our lives. So yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, is Seeds of Hope a still? Are you still working on that store and that kind of thing? Can you tell us about that a little
Yeah.
bit?
Seeds of Hope is our thrift store, and this is the 30th year we've had that open. It's a huge part of our budget. It's about 30% of our budget.
Wow.
And so we rely on that resource for fundraising, especially now with the political climate, and what might be
Yep.
happening with some grants and things like that. It's nice to have that backup sort of piece for us. So yeah, we have this amazing Christmas store that we open in October that's in the basement of our thrift store, and everybody waits for that to open. I think I'm maybe partial, but I do think that it's one of the nicer thrift stores in town. Just a lot of dedicated staff, and we only have three full-timers over there, and then probably about 15 to 20 part-timers. And some of them have been there 15 years, so 20 years. So they believe in the mission, they believe in what they're doing, they work really hard. I mean, our dock is full all the time, and pricing is consistently busy. They price 10 boxes and 15 more come in. So that's where we definitely could use volunteers. There's always something to do over there. And it's
Okay.
just a fun kind of atmosphere to be in as well most of the time. So yeah, it's great. I think it's an amazing project, and I think every domestic violence place should have one because it definitely helps with that unrestricted money so that you can use it for other
Yeah.
programs or payroll or whatever you need it for. So yeah, it definitely helps keep our programs going.
And it has this, again, that more holistic way of like you have an opportunity for donations to help people, and then you have the
Right.
people working there who can have job training. It kind of just does this whole good for the organization and community at the same
And a
time.
couple other things we do there too is if when someone's moving out of our shelter into their own housing, we'll help them furnish their apartment a little bit,
Hmm.
or at least give them like, a gift card to go pick out some things so they also have the autonomy of picking out the things they like.
Hmm.
And then anybody in the community doesn't even have to be a client of ours if they need an outfit for an interview or starting a new job and they need black pants and a white shirt or something, they can
Hmm.
call our main office and get a referral over to Seeds of Hope. So we try to give back to the community as well. And like you mentioned, the job training piece, when people finish the New Directions education and employment curriculum, they can work at the store for part of that and earn
Okay.
some experience in retail and have something to put on their resumes.
Yeah. Very important, especially again, it's harder to find a job than you think it is
Right.
sometimes
Yep.
without those
Yeah.
skills.
Yep.
Um,
Exactly.
what are there, do you do annual events? Do you have anything that you um, regularly do for fundraising, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so our signature event, I guess, is Galentine's, and we hold that on Super
Mm.
Bowl Sunday in the morning. So it's usually like 11 to 1 or something like that. And it's just a fun day I mean, we've had men there too, so even though it's Galentine's, I'm open to selling tickets to whoever. But we usually have a pretty impactful speaker, some kind of silent auction type things, a brunch. It's just been like a fun morning and, to kind of do something before you go get into the Super Bowl craziness, if that's your thing. But
Yeah.
it's been really attended fairly well, and we're just going to keep trying to build it and expand it some more. So, yeah, so that'll be in February. And then we participate in things like Giving Hearts Day and Giving
Mhm.
Tuesday. We've got some awareness events that we do in April, which is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and then in October, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Next year, 2026, is our 50th year, so we plan on having a pretty big, hopefully, celebration in October
Yeah.
next year. And
Cool.
yeah, one
Okay.
program I didn't mention, I should have
Yeah.
thought about it, but or two actually that are kind of two of our larger programs. We have the Visitation Center, the Family Safety Center.
Mhm.
So we
Okay.
provide supervised visitation and exchange services to people who maybe can't have contact but still need to see their children.
Hmm.
And so we serve about 30 families a week, I would guess. And
Wow.
then a couple years ago, we started offender intervention. So um, we Lutheran Social Services used to do the batterers intervention programming, and through legislation, we've changed the name now to Domestic Violence Offender Intervention Programming.
Okay.
And so when someone's convicted of a domestic violence crime, they're court ordered to attend offender intervention. Um, we picked up that program here in Bismarck and have been doing it successfully for a couple of years. We now have three groups going, two men's groups and a women's group.
Hmm.
It is a service that people pay for, but we've found that accountability is sometimes a little better when you have to pony up some money for it. So, yeah, so that's going really well. And then we'll follow those people if they complete the group, which is for the men is a 6 month group once a week.
Hmm.
Um, then we follow them for 2 years to see if
Okay.
they kind of, reoffend or not. And um, Grand Forks has been doing that program for a really long time and have great success. And then some of the other areas have picked up the programming too, Minot and Williston, and always seemed like maybe not the best thing for a domestic violence agency to do when we're so focused on victims. But
Hmm.
in my opinion, it's another way to decrease violence. And if we can do that where it's happening, then that's a win. So we don't do it on any of our properties. We're not
Okay.
mixing, offenders and victims together, but um, definitely some eye-opening comments that have come out of there that they've realized that their behavior is not okay and they need to change it. So, really glad we took that program on.
Yeah, that's good. And I think the education side of it, the just putting people back out into the world without thinking through how those things may have come across or what, because a lot of people, to be honest, they don't realize what they're doing, how hurtful it can be sometimes. And I think that's a real, it's that education component is probably very much more important than the punishment portion of
Yeah,
things.
especially if they
So
grew up in it. If they saw their
yeah,
parents
Yeah.
fighting and
Yeah.
whatever, then that's what they think is normal, and that's not okay. So yeah.
Yeah. So that's great. I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot when Lutheran Social Services went out of business in 2021 that you took that over. So thank you
Yeah.
for mentioning that. Yeah. If people are wanting to get a hold of you or need to find you, how do they find AARC?
A couple different ways. We have our 24-hour crisis line, like you mentioned.
Mhm.
That's 866-341-7009. Um, you can email us at aarc@aarcnd.com. People can show up at our door. Law enforcement brings people a lot of the time. What else? Facebook. We have a
Yeah.
Facebook page. We have an Instagram page. So yeah, pretty much. I mean, I have people, I shouldn't even say this, but I have people inbox me on Facebook sometimes that are like, I need help. What can I do? So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I think the thing is that any of us advocates that work there, we're going to help people however they
Mhm.
come to us. I've run into people in the mall and they've said like, I've been thinking about leaving and what do I do? And I'm not just going to give them a card and run. It's like, let's talk about
Like
it. So
let's figure this out.
yes. Yep.
Very good. Well, I'll make sure to put the numbers and the website and email into the description of our show
That'd
notes when we're
be
done
great.
recording. So,
Yeah.
um, anything else you want to mention? There's so many services you all offer, and I find that whenever I see a problem, like you said in Facebook or somewhere, AARC is one of the ones in Bismarck that gets mentioned all the time because you do have that reputation of we're going to figure out some way to
Right.
help. You
Right. And I think, like, for me, social media has been really frustrating. I'm Gen X, so I didn't ever grow up with that. And now it
know?
feels like everything is out there. And I feel like just remember that when you see a comment where somebody says AARC didn't help me, or
Yep.
there's always two sides to every story. A lot of the times it's funding driven. Maybe we just didn't have the funding, or our shelter was full, or who knows? It could be a variety of
Yes.
situations, but it's always the negative comments that are out there sometimes, and not so much the positive. But there are lots of positive. I see
Yeah.
people
There are.
saying, "Well, they saved my life," or "They did this," or "They helped me do that," and I appreciate that too. But yeah, I think it's just if you don't know if we're going to help with it, just call and
Mhm.
ask. I go to Heartview and I present on healthy relationships to the groups over there, and so many times people are like, "Well, I didn't know you did that," or "Can I go there even if I experienced violence 10 years ago?" And a lot of
Mhm.
the times, some of the issues people are dealing with now, including housing, are based on a situation that may have happened 5 or 10, 15 years ago. So domestic violence definitely impacts a lot of your future situations. And so I think it's important to just talk to us. Like, it doesn't
Yep.
cost anything if you come over and talk to us and find out what we can help with or even provide some direction. Sometimes that's all people want. And sometimes they want to stay in that relationship for now, but they want to be safer, and we'll help figure that out too. So whatever we can help with, we will. And if we can't, we'll try to hook you up with somebody that can.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for your time. Tons of information about AARC, and I really appreciate hearing how you got into what you're doing now from a long
Yeah.
time ago in transitional housing. But
Yeah.
thanks for your time, Michelle, and we look
Thank
forward
you.
to working with you more. Thanks everyone for tuning into LSND Live, and we'll see you on Monday mornings.